These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
We were thinking about suspending Kyle indefinitely for the obscene Portland avatar that he's rocking here. You got the Portland flannel, the Portland thick, or just Pacific Northwest, the thick glasses, the thick mustache. You're very, very Pacific Northwest here today.
My parents are in town. I got this cool little jacket this week, and I just haven't stopped wearing it. And then I was on a meeting today with my real job, and someone pointed out that I look just like a truck driver. So I'm a zin away from just riding up and down I-29, but it's also
actually. You look like you'd be the head of like a craft beer movement, which is a good segue into shouting out our. You'd fit in with Modest. In fact,
yes, absolutely, good call.
Modest Brewing in the North Loop. The Wolves, so they're playing tonight against Dallas, but then they're back home on Saturday. Great place. Indiana's coming to town, and they're going to be mad because they didn't get that game ball from last night.
God.
Playing the Bucks. A lot of drama about the game ball last night. But Modest Brewing. It's a great tap room in the North Loop, just steps away from Target Center. Cans available in liquor stores throughout the metro area. So if you're looking for a spot to grab a beer or multiple before or after a Wolves game, and like I said, Saturday against Indiana could be a great spot for you. And maybe you can dress up like Kyle. A little mustache, some thick glasses, a trucker hat, and a flannel, and order your favorite Modest craft brew.
You've met my dad. He's a big fan of you. Bigger fan of you than he is of me, ironically. But he has a good mustache. So I was proud to show him that as they came out. I did say I would delete this thing if they lost 2 games in a row, which Alan Horton had. I had said last time we recorded that the Wolves hadn't lost 2 regular season games, I think, since March 31st. Alan took it a step further, and the Wolves are the only team in the league that hasn't lost back-to-back games, is what I think he tweeted. So that's another fun stat. They do play the Mavericks tonight. I think the Mavs will be at not full strength.
No Kyrie, it sounds like.
Yeah, and Luka is Luka, but I don't know if Ant's going to play or any of that stuff, but they have a good matchup tonight. I think the Mavericks are my new fraud of the year. I just don't think they're that good. I think Luka's awesome, but they just rely heavily on guys that are pretty hit or miss. So should be a good game tonight, but I know we have more fun things we want to talk about today because nothing's happened since we last recorded.
Well, nothing's happened in terms of the Wolves playing a game, but let's get into some of this Draymond stuff. We went heavy the day after he tried to choke out Rudy Gobert, and I think our biggest praise for the Wolves that night was nice job not freaking out, not getting a bunch of players ejected. It took them 3 more quarters to lock it back in against the Warriors' backups, but it was a very business-like, professional, and mature victory after one of the least mature, least professional things that's ever been done on a basketball court. And then Draymond Green comes back again here, and he just straight off turns around and literally punches. Was it Nurkic? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, Yusuf Nurkic for
Nurkic.
The Suns.
Yep. Just literally hauls off and right hooks him upside the head, and then tries to play it off like I didn't mean to. He is suspended indefinitely. I'm torn on this because, on one hand, dude, get the hell out of here. What are you doing? And then from the NBA standpoint, if you don't levy some sort of really heavy-handed suspension, and we don't know how long it's going to be, players are going to start to take matters into their own hands. I mean, if I'm out there and I'm looking around, wait a second, we're not going to punish this dude for more than a couple of games? Okay, well, he needs to be taught a lesson. So the league has to teach him a lesson. But I also kind of just feel, I don't want to say feel bad for him, but there's clearly something wrong or something missing. There's a chip or something off with him. You don't just go from, hey, we're playing a basketball game and things are a little bit chippy and physical to I'm going to try and black you out with a rear naked chokehold. Why is he operating on such a stressful level, I guess, is my biggest question. But what did you make of just the latest? I think the Wolves kind of started this, unbeknownst to them, and now Draymond is out indefinitely.
Yeah, did the Minnesota Timberwolves end the Golden State Warriors dynasty next on Undisputed? That's how you would take it, right? I'm with you. The punch was just so egregious in the moment too. It was kind of weird because I think Stan Van Gundy was on the call and he was kind of like, whatever. It's no, it's not a whatever. And we have no journalistic integrity on this show, and we just like to make jokes. But there does come a time where it's so far removed from basketball that it just takes away from this season has been so fun. The in-season tournament was a success. the competitiveness in both conferences is every night there's a new team in first. So there's just crazy. I mean, there's so many good teams right now. The league is loaded. So I actually thought the punch on Nurkic wasn't any more egregious than what he did to Gobert. Like I do still think we kind of underplayed how random that was. That was different because there was a skirmish that he was apparently trying to break up, but he like just choked a guy. Like I don't know. That just is so weird to me, and it could have gotten so much worse. And I remember still as a kid where I was in my parents' basement watching TV in my room when like the Malice at the Palace happened. Yeah, and I know I'm connecting one thing to like a further out thing, but it's just, you just don't need that. I mean, he got ejected, I think, against the Kings last season, where he was like almost standing on the bench, like riling up the fans. And it's just embarrassing. As much as like I embarrass myself when I say stupid things, like there does come a point where it's like, hey, you're a professional, like be a professional. So I'm glad. I mean, an indefinite suspension, I was doing like a side wager with my friends on 5 games, 10 games. Indefinite seems even more embarrassing because then they started to use things like, hey, you need to get help.
Right.
And I don't know how he's a tough guy. Like that's like his persona, and it's worked for him. He's won, 4 rings, and he's made it out of Michigan, and he's a success story. But I don't know, man. Like I don't know when he can come back. I mean, if you want to suspend John Morant, and again, guns are totally different than what Draymond's going on, but the NBA just had enough with John. They're like, no, you're done for a quarter of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Draymond for like a month.
Well, just real quick, and not that we need to like compare
this is way too serious.
But
we're like yelling at people and like, look at us.
Well, but hold on, because you bring up the Ja thing, and I understand that the NBA when they hand down suspensions, some of it is, did you do something against the rules? Did you do something against the CBA? Did you do something against the law? Did you do something to hurt the image of the league? So it's not just like, what's interesting though is I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ja didn't do anything illegal. Like he didn't break any laws that we know of, but he was just sort of recklessly representing the NBA and the Memphis Grizzlies, and multiple times after being told stop, right? Mm-hmm. You could argue that Draymond Green is breaking the law on a basketball court with the 2 incidents that have gotten him suspended this year. Mm-hmm. Rear naked choke holding another human being, not in self-defense, by the way. The skirmish had nothing to do with him. He's literally just inserting himself and trying to choke another man out. Mm-hmm. And then a really benign basketball play where Nurkic is just, he's tugging at the jersey a little bit, maybe a little bit of contact. We've seen way more contact on 30 other possessions in that game probably. And his response is to turn around and right hook him upside the head. Physical violence. So, and then to your point about the indefinite suspension, it really is. I mean, it's saying, hey, let's all just take a deep breath here. We don't know how long you're going to have to be out because we don't know how much work needs to be done under the hood, which is like a really condescending thing and emasculating thing to say to an NBA tough guy. Mm-hmm. And then the reaction from his peers, the players, right? Nurkic post-game press conference, Kevin Durant, some other guys. It's not, boy, he better, next time we see him, he's got something coming. It's literally like, man, we just kind of feel sorry for that guy. He's like going through it. And like Kevin Durant said, yeah, it's not really the guy that I was teammates with a few years ago. So hopefully that guy can get some help for whatever he's going through. It's like he's not even riling anyone up anymore. It's just like, yeah, let's just remove this guy and maybe send him to a therapist for a month and see what happens.
And I've been pretty open here about like mental health and stuff. And if that's what's in play here, I mean, I also get defensive of it too, because there are times, and I don't know about this, I don't know everything involved here, but there are times too where people use it as like an excuse or something. And it's like mental health is a real thing. And I don't think we should use it just to cover up other just piss poor actions. I think Draymond has some piss poor actions here, but I also too, building on your point and the players' responses after their Gobert thing. Like we talked about Pat Bev on here. We talked about some other guys. Then yesterday it was like Gilbert Arenas came out and was basically showed, and I don't really like Gilbert Arenas, but he had like this trend of he's basically going at all the Euros. Like all these situations, Rudy Gobert, Nurkic, Sabonis, they're all European players. I think Nick Young, Swaggy P, also said that he's going after these foreign players. I don't know what that is. Tom Haberstroh did like a deep dive, but all in all, I enjoy the NBA, and I also enjoy some of the other stuff that comes with the NBA. I like transactions. I like the drama. I like chasing around Instagram likes and stuff. But this isn't any of that. This is just, again, these are all tough, super athletic individuals that are 260, 270. They can hold their own, but it's taking away from. I was really excited to watch Suns Warriors that night, and he's pulling himself off the court. And to me, it all kind of summarizes. And I kind of said this in the moment when the Warriors-Wolves fight happened, but I still like listening to Bill Simmons. I might be in the minority there, but I still like listening to it.
Yeah.
And he's been having Doc Rivers on periodically. Yeah. And I think Doc is great because he does.
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, he does. He does promote himself a little bit, but he also just kind of fires from the hip, and that's my favorite thing about when you get these players or these coaches on pods. But he had a really good take on Simmons earlier this week where he said that Warriors fight with the Wolves was a really eye-opening thing for Doc because it showed that the Warriors looked across the ring, looked across the court, and were like, they're passing us. Like, we're falling behind now, and it made them, like, I don't know, panic. I mean, you saw how Klay Thompson reacted. Klay Thompson's been a shell of himself. So I think you saw a dynasty that might be on its last leg see this team that has more size, has more athleticism, is coached better. I mean, the Warriors are not well coached this year. I've gone in on Steve Kerr and how many bad decisions he's made going back to Team USA. So you're just starting to see. I mean, this is how it ends, right? This is what happens, whether it be with adults or dynasties or organizations.
The cleanest one was the Bulls, but the Bulls one left us all unfulfilled because, like, oh man, it's their second three-peat. You can't break this thing up. But what would have happened if they would have tried again for another year or two? Dennis Rodman probably hauls off and punches people like Draymond Green, and Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan are aging out. It's like, most dynasties, there's not like a clean break. Even the Spurs, to some extent, you had Kawhi Leonard had like the mystery injury, and he's sitting out. I mean, at least age was kind of the main reason why that team faded out. But they also like took a step. They were getting beat in the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, there's no clean way to say, all right, that was a great dynasty. Okay, everyone, we're gonna go our own separate ways, and this is gonna be great. Shaq and Kobe, tell me how my ass tastes.
Yeah.
Remember that whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, when this is all said and done, and the Jaden and Ant dynasty breaks up, and they've only won 4 titles instead of 6. I'm sure it'll be messy too, and it'll be a great 30 for 30. But yeah, I mean, the Warriors wake up this morning, and it really did. I joke, but it really did start to fall apart with that first Wolves game in Golden State, because then Draymond was suspended for 5 games, and I think Steph was out, and they just started to lose a bunch of games. They wake up this morning, they're 10-13. They're 7.5 games back of the Wolves. The last time they played the Warriors, they played the Suns, they closed with basically Steph and a bunch of young guys. So that all kind of segues into just another random thought that was in my head. But Friday, tomorrow, is December 15th. So starting tomorrow is when you're going to see trade season kick off, because all the guys that signed contracts this summer are now eligible to be traded. So I think the Golden State Warriors will be as much in the mix as anyone when it comes to trades. And I don't know what trade makes sense from the Wolves and Warriors standpoint. I guess maybe like Leonard Miller for Steph, but
you got to make the call, right? You got to float the offer.
Starting tomorrow, it's going to get chaotic for many reasons. Not only because Draymond doesn't, really have a job indefinitely, but also because they're going to be a team that, and you're going to start to see that too. We've talked about a little bit, like, could the Wolves trade Kyle Anderson? Could the Wolves package Shake Milton and a young guy and some picks? But trade season starts tomorrow, really starts tomorrow, and it's, I think, a 2-month sprint because the deadline is sometime in February. So the Wolves will be one of many teams that I think are buyers that are looking to improve, looking to consolidate, maybe, a couple guys into one guy they can bring off the bench. So the NBA is only getting juicier, even though the in-season tournament ended. The NBA really starts to take off this week and these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, what do you real quick on the Warriors front? Let's come back to trades. I love that you opened the trades door, because
you're welcome.
We can talk about that. It's also a reckless speculation Thursday across SKOR North.
Reckless speculation.
It's a safe space to speculate recklessly about how to improve our teams. But on the Warriors real quick, because one of the things we talked about too, when the Wolves went in and beat them in back-to-back games, we both came out of that. Probably I took it a step further, which I always do. And I said, I think Anthony Edwards was the best player on the court, period, for the season over Steph Curry. Now, Steph Curry has been the only thing recognizable on that team from the actual Warriors dynasty years. So I probably took a step too far there. But That team is currently 11th in the Western Conference standings. 1 through 6 get to a playoff series. 7 through 10 play in, right? So they're on the outside of the play in right now. They're 2.5 games behind the Suns, who I would expect to climb at some point. They are 3 games behind the Rockets, Clippers, and Pelicans. I think if Zion can play enough games, and we talked about that a couple days ago on this show, like that team is really good. That's a 14-11 team, but when they're fully stocked, that's probably one of the 4 or 5 best teams easy in the Western Conference. I guess my question is, who are the Warriors climbing? I guess you could look and say the Rockets. Like, the Rockets are off to a fun start. They're 12-9. They're young, but they're also well coached. I don't know who they're climbing at this point. I feel like you're right. You're kind of joking, but just as much as getting Draymond suspended and putting a light shine on him, I think the Wolves beating that team back-to-back nights, and we came on the show the next day and we're like, oh yeah, if those two teams play in a playoff series, maybe a gentleman's sweep in 5 games. But the Wolves are definitively better than the Warriors. Unless they make a big trade, I don't know that team is a play-in team right now. Is that a hot take?
No, and it's the nuance that is so not built for like Twitter. Is the Timberwolves are better than the Warriors? Just pause. Like that's it. But that doesn't mean that the Timberwolves are as successful as the Warriors, or that they didn't mess up not drafting Steph. Like, yes, make fun of the Minnesota Timberwolves for basically every day of the year for the last 19 years. But now, like, this is how, right, trends work, and you got to be ahead of things rather than behind. I just don't see. I mean, the Warriors have lost 8 more games already, and now they don't have their best defensive player, and they're getting nothing from Klay Thompson. You want to talk about trades? They did get a ring from the infamous D Angelo Russell Andrew Wiggins swap, and I would literally cut off my arm for a championship banner and ring. But since then, the Wiggins stuff has been so bad again. Like, go search Warriors Twitter. They are so over him. They extended him. They're kind of stuck with him. I don't know. Would you trade – contracts don't really work here, but would you trade Mike Conley straight up for Andrew Wiggins right now, which is kind of what it ended up being? Like, hell no.
You know what's funny? You had texted just that as one of our
I just
fleeting thoughts before
things.
the show. Like, hey, like let's touch on this Wiggins thing. So I was just kind of mapping this out. In retrospect, what an amazing series of transactions. So
it's so fun. It's so
you
fun.
start with Andrew Wiggins, who, I started blabbing into a microphone on a daily basis in 2010, part-time from like 2005 through 10. But I've like inexplicably had a microphone every day talking about Minnesota sports starting in 2010. On my Mount Rushmore of players I have been the hardest on, Kirk Cousins probably up there, I think people would say.
Okay.
Miguel Sano, Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns at times more recently, but Andrew Wiggins might be number 1.
Yep.
It always bothered me how that dude he would sleepwalk for 35 minutes. He just discovered rebounding with the Warriors, 8 years into his career. He was just taking a nap out there for 6 years as a number 1 overall pick. Now it's not his fault that the Wolves said, we're going to trade for you to come in here and be the centerpiece and save our crumbling franchise. But you wind up shoving him out the door and his contract, and you had to attach a first-round pick. So it was Wiggins and a first-round pick, right? For D'Lo.
The Timberwolves essentially traded Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, who was that first-round pick, and a future second for Mike Conley,
Nickeil Alexander-Walker,
yep, Leonard Miller, and 2 future seconds. And then I said this back in November. There's like some Omari Spellman mixed in there. I think he might be playing in China or on the moon now. But that's it. So take it away. But yeah, it's basically
in the middle of that, but in the middle of that, you got like 2 or 3 years of D Angelo Russell. And by the end, it was clear that you're not going to re-sign him, and he just wasn't. But you needed D Angelo Russell to go from being a non-playoff team to a team that could win, be competitive, win 40 games a couple years. Like, he was a talented player that fit well in what you were trying to build. So so you say goodbye to Wiggins. You get D'Lo as a transitional guy that helps you go from, a 30-win team to a 40-win team. And then when you decide, okay, how do we go from 40 wins to 50 wins? Well, D'Lo's probably not part of that process. Okay, we'll kick 2 months of his expiring contract to the curb and get an adult point guard here who facilitates, plus Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And like, That's a great series of transactions, right?
I think that when you and I read our book down the road, I think the D'Lo tenure in Minnesota, in my mind, will be looked at through my eyes as a much more of a positive than it will be a negative. Because I also, too, maybe we'll never confirm this. Maybe we'll get this on the record one day. But when the Tom Thibodeau stuff kind of boiled over to the point where they brought in Ryan Saunders and it was really bad, there was a moment there where it seemed like, if Carl wanted to demand a trade, you would understand it. Because that's what these guys do, right? Like, they've been mistreated. They've had so much turnover in the organization. They're like, I want a fresh start. And I still think the D'Lo bridged that and kept Carl around because at the time they were really good buds, those two and Devin Booker. And and then D'Lo was, during COVID, we're all on Zoom. Like, he was the representative that put his finger up when they won the Ant Draft lottery. So I think D'Lo's tenure here allowed them to kind of dig themselves out a little bit of the basement, have a little stability. But then, like you said, then they realized they got Tim Connolly in here. We need to make one more adult type transaction, and they did that. But you really can tie 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, Andrew Wiggins, right to Mike Conley and the stuff that came in the Mike Conley trade, and it's really fascinating. I mean, as much as Gobert's been great, and as much as the 2020 draft class has changed the foundation of this team moving forward, that Wiggins for D'Lo for Mike Conley and stuff has altered the franchise almost as much as anything else.
We should almost do we should just launch a separate podcast where we do Minnesota sports trade lineage.
That'd be
where
so
we start
fun.
with
So fun.
Okay,
I mean, we'd
the
be
Kevin
drunk.
Garnett trade, and then
Sad.
do all.
Yeah.
Dude, the saddest one. Man, you're a Twins fan, right? You're a
Yeah.
Minnesota
Oh,
Twins
yeah.
fan. So the Twins in 2007, I believe it was, the winter meetings going into the 2008 season, they said, "Hey, we're probably not going to be able to re-sign Johan Santana, so he's got 1 year left. Unfortunately, we got to trade Johan Santana." And I've never found out exactly what they passed on, but there was a bunch of rumors early in that offseason that, for baseball fans, you'll know these names. The Red Sox had some star young players like Jacoby Ellsbury and I think John Lester. These guys wind up being, all-star players. The Yankees had guys. They had Melky Cabrera, who was a really good hitter for a few years, and even Phil Hughes was a top prospect, had a couple good years. But the Twins kind of waited it out, and they work a deal with the Mets for Carlos Gomez and a few 3 other minor league players. One of them, actually, Phil Umber, did throw a no-hitter or a perfect game with a different team like the White Sox.
I remember that.
Just kind of 3 guys who never really amounted to anything. So, all right, so Johan Santana for Carlos Gomez. Okay, let's ride. Couple years of Gomez, he never lived up to it, and they're like, it's just not really working with Carlos Gomez. Let's trade him for shortstop J.J. Hardy. We're going to trade him for J.J. Hardy to the Brewers. Good, solid shortstop. Hardy has wrist issues in his 1 year with the Twins. He's just like the worst year of his career with the Twins. Okay, it's not really working out with J.J. Hardy. We need some pitching. Let's just trade him for Jim Hoey, who's a flame-throwing reliever with... Was it the Orioles? I think it was the Orioles. So they wind up, if you follow the trade lineage, they basically traded Johan Santana. 4 years later, they wind up with Jim Hoey in their right hand. But we could do 100 of these, I feel like, for Timberwolves, for Twins.
And that was talking baseball on Flagrant House.
Yep.
No, I'm with you. I think when you were saying that in the lineage of a trade, I think of Robert Covington and just all the lineage of when he came in here and then when they traded him away, and you could do that with so many. It'd be a great podcast just locally too, right? Of all the Minnesota teams and who they traded and what that became. It's going to happen again with the Gobert stuff, right? When you trade that many future firsts, we're basically going to talk about the Gobert trade, despite my best wishes, until I'm 50. Because in 2029, if they give up a pick and that pick 5 years later becomes an all-star, it'll be 2034. And I'll be like, oh my God, that kid who is probably now 6 years old is he's running the league. I'm like, and then I'm going to get made fun of on whatever X has sold to and become. And I'm like, oh, people are making fun of me and I'm 50 years old.
And I think it's one thing when you trade Kevin Garnett in 2007 for future assets. Mm-hmm. Okay, you're going to be judged on how those future assets, the success of that trade. And yeah, you could say process. It's a process success if you get enough draft picks, whatever, and then it's kind of up to the basketball gods. But you're going to be judged on how well do those future assets become good. Did any of them now? the funny thing is, if the Wolves had didn't they get a 2009 first round pick that one of those picks, I think they took either Johnny Flynn or Ricky Rubio. If they take Steph Curry instead, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, the Wolves flipped aging Kevin Garnett for Steph Curry, and there's a different story. But if it's the other way around, I feel like when you give up future assets for an established player, you're conceding, oh, those future assets are probably going to turn into something great for that team, but that's neither here nor there, because right now we need this established player to help us get to the next level. So I don't even really care if Utah's picks turn out to be, they could have the next Michael Jordan, and it's like the Wolves needed a star player right now for Anthony Edwards and for Karl Anthony Towns in this team right here. So.
And Ross made a good point in the chat. We still, you do Purple Daily, which is the most successful football podcast in America. We still talk about Herschel Walker trade.
Pretty close. I wouldn't say it's the most successful, is it?
Well, the numbers I ran. But like Herschel Walker's a thing as a Vikings fan, however old you are, you still kind of bring it up, right? So we're going to talk about the Rudy Gobert trade, even if it leads to titles or it leads to complete destruction for the next 10 years. I still, going back to, this will be another episode in the new pod we drop, but like the Kevin Love rumors back then, where they were like Kevin Love for Klay Thompson. Not only would that have been wild in retrospect, but how would that have changed the league? Because then not only does Kevin Love not go to Golden State, he goes to Cleveland. Cleveland plays Golden State. They win a title. They lose a title. Like, it's just, that would
Does Golden State still win titles? Do they still bring in Kevin Durant? Do they, what does
Draymond Green choke out Rudy Gobert if the Wolves trade Kevin Love to the Warriors? Next on Undisputed.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
These are all great questions for a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast. Just going through trade lineage over the course of 15 years. I think we should jump into a random Wolf of the Week here. That's what I think. After we shout out a couple of friends, I want to see if I can get on the board. We just named a bunch of random Wolves there too. Maybe the answer. I
was struggling when you're like, hey, let's record today, and it's like, what do we have to talk about? Let's do 30 minutes on the Warriors.
Let's do 30 minutes on the Warriors and trade lineage, and here we are. So our friends over at Sound Story are here with a great concept for a holiday gift for you. So I've told you guys before. In fact, yesterday would have been my grandfather, who I never met. He died 16 years before I was born. Yesterday would have been his 115th birthday. So
wow.
He would have been pretty old. And I've never heard his voice. I've never heard his stories. I've never heard from his own voice. We were actually listening to, my wife and I, we've saved like voice memos from my dad who died a year ago. And it was kind of fun just going back and listening to some of that random stuff. Like, oh, it's my dad's voice. Well, that's where Sound Story comes in. Think of it like a podcast in which the guest is one of the most important people in your life. Your mom, your dad, your grandpa, your grandma, capturing those childhood memories, those career accomplishments, the story about how they met their spouse. With Sound Story, you can go on mysoundstory.com. It starts at $3.99, but you can get 10% off with a promo code PURPLE at mysoundstory.com. And you can choose a professional interviewer. I am on that list in the Minneapolis-St. Paul section, to sit down and capture audio and even video, if you want, in a studio setting of your loved one telling stories. mysoundstory.com, promo code PURPLE, 10% off a gift certificate. Sound Story, for you, for them, forever. So I've had a number of people, I think I saw like 12 the other day, have jumped in. I'm going to try and schedule these out here in like January and February, but I am pumped. Get to meet a bunch of new people and help you guys tell your stories. Also, on a totally different note, Kyle, our friends at Popped Corn are here with a delicious snack for you.
Hell yeah.
This holiday season. Popped Corn has over 80 flavors of small batch popcorn to make your holiday gift giving pop. They even have special Timberwolves tins that you can get access to. We've got a couple in our office. In fact, let me see here. This is going to be a janky way to do it. But if I could go widescreen here, Roscoe. Can you, here, let's do this.
We're just moving around.
Here we go.
Yeah, you asked me to upload this, and I even didn't.
Look at this. Can you see the Wolves tin right there?
There we go. Oh, that looks, I need a tin in the worst way.
Kyle, we opened it in a meeting yesterday, and I think I ate half the tin.
Dude, the meeting was like, all right, we got to talk about something really important here. It's 4 people, and it's like, I have an important thought on this thing. And we're all just shoving popcorn in my mouth. That's poppedcorn.com. Popped, P-O-P-P-E-D, corn.com. Amazingly creative flavors and Minnesota sports tins as well. So
is that I don't know if they offer this, and if they do, I'm going to order 19 of them. But there's nothing better as we get closer to Christmas or whatever holiday you're celebrating, but just when you sit down with one of those big tins and it's got like the divider in it, and it's like cheese.
Yep.
And you can like customize
popcorn.
Your divided flavors too.
Oh my god,
dude, it's bad.
If you want to just watch a full day of basketball on Christmas and just, I mean, and popcorn is one thing. I think it's healthy for you. Don't fact check that. But it seems like it's healthy for you. So the more you eat,
the
it's
holiday
like
season, man.
It's like celery, right? It's like a negative calorie. So if anything today, you've learned Carlos Gomez history, and popcorn is good for you.
Yeah.
And I think the negative calories, they don't count in December. I think you're good.
Yeah, that's true.
December
Yeah,
1.
December cancels everything out pretty much.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks
and
for
even
that.
if it doesn't, then January you can just,
It's the other 11 months that, will help out.
Those count,
there.
yeah. So random wolf of the week here. Ross, our producer, is in. We've done 4 of these. This will be the 5th one. Kyle has a 4-0 lead all time, correctly guessing Antoine Walker, JJ Barea, Jalen Noel, and Sebastian Telfair last week. Ross is going to throw out a series of clues. We get to shout out answers however they pop into our heads. If you guess wrong 3 times, you're out and the other person gets an automatic win. That's how Declan won. I think it was a couple weeks ago. He won Random Viking of the Week when I just like rifled off 3 dumb guesses, and he's like, "Oh, Willie Offord. I don't know who that is, but I'll take the victory."
Willie Offord. Wow.
Early 2000s Vikings.
There's a name for you.
Yeah. So,
all right, boys. How do you feel about this? You ready?
Oh, I'm always ready. I started very hesitant, and now this is easily my favorite segment I do every week on any pod.
Yeah,
I am more confident than I should be, having gotten smoked 4 times here. I'm ready.
You haven't made a basket yet, and Phil's just like, watch me cook.
Phil's like the jobber in Wrestler. Everybody knows he's going to lose except for Phil. All right, here we go. This Wolf of the Week gentleman was born in Salisbury, North Carolina. Salisbury, North Carolina. This Wolf of the Week was a first-round pick in the NBA draft. First-round pick, born in Salisbury, North Carolina. This Wolf of the Week is currently 50 years old.
I have a guess. Hold on, let me do math. He's probably not this old, but is it Will Avery?
It is not Will Avery. Who does a better buzzer, you or me? I kind of like mine.
I'm pretty used to buzzing myself in this game.
Yours is very professional and well done. This Wolf of the Week gentleman played in 123 games for the Minnesota Timberwolves. 123 games. This Wolf of the Week started just 22 games over that 123 game stretch. Kyle is really thinking about this one. Really thinking about it.
Well,
he's 50. Okay, we're going to hang on that. He's 50.
This Wolf of the Week gentleman played guard.
So he would have been.
Okay.
Okay, hold on.
This.
Okay, hold on.
So the motor's running in my brain now a little bit. There's like 12 guys it could be, but I won't say anything yet.
Kyle wants more clues. Mm-hmm. Phil is thinking he might have a guess.
I do have another guess, but I also then I get nervous about being wrong twice, and now I have 1 strike left. So I'm trying to. But then Kyle's going to come in on his first guess and probably just nail it. So maybe I should just be aggressive.
Well, should we see if this next clue helps you?
Okay.
Next.
This Wolf of the Week averaged 9.7 points per game over his 12-year career.
That's pretty good.
Okay. Keep coming, Ross.
This is where I think it may start to turn a little bit. This Wolf of the Week last played for Sacramento.
Anthony Peeler.
Oh, really?
By the way, this Wolf of the Week...
No. I'll get... So just for the listeners at home, as we continue to develop this game, Phil has one more guess, and if Phil were to be wrong...
you
win.
Yep. And you know that I'm desperate here, too, so...
Okay, but now
You could let me just choke myself out here. I could just Draymond Green myself here, and you would win.
You kind of have almost a free guess here. It still counts, but you're way up here.
No,
no,
I'm
Kyle.
I'm feeling very sympathetic. So I don't think Anthony Peeler, by the way, was on what I wrote down. So Phil burned that one for me. That makes me think of someone, but I know your next clue is going to be even better, and I want to dunk on that one because I bet you I know what the next clue is.
This Wolf of the Week is currently an NBA assistant coach.
Bobby
in
Jackson.
The Eastern Phil Mackey!
Yes,
He's on the board, ladies and gentlemen! You're on the board!
That did nothing for me. The assistant coach, I did think I knew that, but the one Ross, how many more clues do you have? Just wondering, number wise.
Yeah, go through the rest of your clues.
Yeah, a fair amount, but they get a bit easier. So this Wolf of the Week played college basketball in the Big Ten.
He played for the Gophers.
He did.
That's what I would have gotten at. Okay.
Yep. This Wolf of the Week played for 6 different NBA franchises. This one's a little random, but this Wolf of the Week ended one decade and began another decade as a member of the Timberwolves, 1999 and 2000.
Yeah. See, when you said he was 50 years old, I was trying to do the math. Okay, so he was 22 in 1995, right, or something like that.
Yep.
I think that math.
He had a pretty darn good NBA career.
So now I had to go on Wikipedia. Jackson graduated from Salisbury High School in 92. He attended Western Nebraska Community College and later the U of M, Minnesota. As a Golden Gopher, Bobby Jackson led Minnesota to a Final Four where they lost to
Arizona.
UCLA.
The Kentucky Wildcats.
Kentucky. Kentucky.
Wait,
then Arizona.
Did we just name the Final Four?
Then Arizona won the rest of it.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Arizona beat Kentucky that year, right? That was Mike Bibby.
Also,
I think we might have just named the Final Four for that. The 1997 Final Four was Arizona.
No, the Gophers beat UCLA in the Elite Eight.
Carolina was the other one.
Yeah, the Gophers
They did beat UCLA. Yeah.
Here are the fun ones where you guys absolutely would have nailed it. This Wolf of the Week was known for his sock game in the NBA and around the state of Minnesota. High Sox.
Yeah.
Although not technically true per Ross's own eyes, this Wolf of the Week played in a Final Four.
The banners have been apparently the
They're
banners
gone.
are like rolled up and under the bleachers somewhere at Williams Arena.
This Wolf of the Week shares a last name with the King of Pop.
Okay.
You guys
if we'd still be
Bobby
sitting here
Bieber?
at this point.
Oh.
And the last one is
Bobby Lipa? Bobby.
It is alleged that this Wolf of the Week didn't always do his own homework while attending the University of Minnesota.
What's funny is, like, of all the scandals we've now seen in college sports, I mean, college sports, literally now it's like we have, like, NIL funds that are, some are legal, some aren't. We had, at one point,
North Carolina had fake classes.
Yes.
Fake classes.
Dude, Louisville had a prostitution ring at one point on campus.
Yes.
And the Gopher basketball team in the late 90s had someone writing papers for them. You know, it's like, what?
This is so not related, but I just saw on Twitter yesterday that the University of Utah has like a big NIL program.
Yes.
They brought the basketball teams, I think both men's and women's, and gymnastics, like to the basketball arena. And they awarded them with their choice of like a 2024 F-250 pickup.
Yes.
Or a 2024 Jeep. And I was just like, it kind of caught me. I'm in my mid-30s, but I was like, we have come so far from like a so-and-so in college basketball got a water bottle paid for them, and now they have to sit out March Madness. It's like they just got F-250s.
That same NIL group, Kyle, did the same thing for 80 scholarship football players. All got trucks.
Isn't that
Anyone
amazing?
would like to give me a truck, I will literally do whatever you want.
10 years ago, I remember, so we used to do our when we did radio shows on 1500 ESPN, and we did, I think it was the old Royce and Mackey show. So we were doing a 3-hour show every day at the State Fair, and the Gopher women's basketball team brought up Rachel Bannum when she was like, this is when she was putting up like 40 or 50 points, and Kobe Bryant was calling her Mamba on Twitter and stuff. And so she comes up on stage, does an interview, super fun, and we had maroon and gold themed 1500 ESPN t-shirts. And so after the interview, we just grabbed one of the t-shirts, and we're giving these away to people in the audience, and we tossed her a t-shirt. She said, "Thank you." And someone from the university like stops her before she gets off stage and says, "That's a violation. You can't take a free t-shirt. You can't you can't take anything." And so she had to give the T-shirt back, and now we're literally giving out trucks to 80 players.
I'll tell my grandkids one day that the reason I didn't play college athletics is because I like free stuff. Had nothing to do with my lack of athleticism or my 6'1" frame. So we have gone through Bobby Jackson, Carlos Gomez, a football player that Phil named that I still don't know. That was who did you? Declan
Willie Offord.
Willie Offord. He was a defensive back for the Vikings like 20 years ago. You know.
This might go down as my favorite pod. Also, I meant to say this at the top Tuesday. Phil, I wanted to say it today and I forgot, but we kind of hinted at it like in the last 30 seconds on Tuesday. We got Neverminds on TV broadcast.
Yeah, how about that?
Right?
Let's hear it for us.
I don't know. Like I said, I don't care who started it. Michael Grady and Jim Pete were so nice to us last Friday during the Grizzlies game, saying our name, saying my name right.
You remember you originally coined it because we were trying to figure out like a year ago, what do we call this? And you're like, let's call it a Mackey. Like, I don't know if that's going to stick. I'm glad that you finally found an actual name. You've honed in on the marketing and the branding of it. The Nevermind. It's a Kyle Theige production here, the Nevermind.
And like I said, if Michael Grady wants it, it's his. He's a legend. I just it was cool to see in that moment that it was like something stupid that you create has now been posted out there. But cool way to promote this podcast, and that's all I have. There's nothing has happened since the Wolves last lost a game, and we'll see tonight. Can they continue their streak of not losing 2 in a row? But Flagrant Howls, your favorite podcast for hot stove talk.
And, this is the benefit of building up a cushion when you get off to a hot start like this. So the Wolves lost their last game.
I thought you were talking about the podcast. Like, we've been doing really well in the ratings, so we'll just talk about baseball today.
The Wolves haven't won a game in 6 days. All right, it's been 6 days, and they still hold a 2-game lead in the Western Conference. Get off to a hot start in life, kids.
To close it down, like, it really is impressive. I love checking the standings every day. Like, I was off the grid last night, and that's when I missed Ballgate with the Bucks and Pacers. Right. And there's other stuff going on in the league, but it really is that hot start, which we thought in September, like, the Wolves need to get out to a hot start so we can believe in them. Like, they did it, and now it's going to pay off dividends because if Ant doesn't play again tonight, not to constantly just steal from Alan Horton, but Alan Horton had a really interesting tweet that over the next 4 games, kind of leave you with this stat porn, Minnesota's number 1 ranked defense will face the NBA's top 3 offenses and its top 2 scorers. So Dallas is 3rd in offense. Doncic is number 2 in points per game. Indiana on Saturday at home. Everyone should go to that. Number 1 offense, the Pacers. Then they play the Heat on Thursday, number 13, and they close next Wednesday against the number 2 offense, Philadelphia, with Embiid, who leads the league with 33.8 points per game. So it is going to be a struggle this next week. They better bring their defense. They better bring their flannels and their mustaches and try to eke out some wins during this 16-game stretch.
And if you're one of those sort of defeatist fans that still has Wolves PTSD, that's okay. I'm here for you too. Mm-hmm. So you have a little bit, you said last week.
Yeah, a little bit. I try to hide it, yeah.
Trying to flush it out. So the Wolves could lose 10 consecutive games, and the Warriors, who are in the spot right below the playoff line, the play-in line, would have to go 8-2 in their next 10 games to tie the Timberwolves off of a 10-game losing streak. So
I really
without
do think
Draymond.
That's a good way to put it. The way that they started this season, it's going to get tougher. It's going to get sludgier. They'll probably have another injury, but they did what they were supposed to do for that first quarter of the season. And now they just need to survive and advance. Going back to March Madness, survive and advance these next 3-4 weeks because it does get a lot easier. So tonight's another test. Kyrie or no Kyrie, Luka Magic is going to be fun to watch.
Yep. All right, that's Kyle. I'm Phil. Thanks to Ross, our producer, and Bobby Jackson for representing the Random Wolf Phil. Of the week. That'll be my lone win. I'm fine. You can win 10 straight now. I got on the board.
Until we find out you cheated just like Bobby Jackson and we have to vacate it. And then I'm back to undefeated.
I had somebody passing me slips of paper. It's Bobby Jackson. This is your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast, Flagrant Howls.